Good afternoon, Council. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of January 28th, 2025 to order. And I just want to make note in chambers, we have Councillor Palmer and Councillor Orlando along with myself. Online, we have Councillor Cherry, Councillor Stapenhurst, and Councillor Luciel. Just want to start to call this meeting to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Orlando, all in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 14th. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Luciel, Councillor Palmer, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I'm going to go on to announcements from the mayor. So I understand that the ready grants are open and closure for them will be 4:30 on February 3rd. And this is a hard closure. There will be nothing accepted after that time on February 3rd. So I just want to let the community know that. And I also want to send our condolences out to the Gillespie family. Don Gillespie Sr. passed away this past week. Many of you know that Mr. Gillespie was our mayor from 1969 through 1971. And when he was first elected to mayor in 1969, he was the youngest mayor at the time at the age of 35. And he has served our community well in all kinds of capacities with the Rotary, the Chamber, and with the cable TV company. So our condolences go out to Grace and his children. And we want to say thank you for your service. Going to move on to recommendations from committees. So for the governance committee, I have a couple policies to be rescinded. And I'm going to ask if one of the councilors could put the first motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Palmer?
That the following policies be rescinded: A11 land sales and A12 land advertisements.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Stapenhurst, comments, please.
Yeah, so Mayor Souls, there was discussion on that, and both of those policies are basically covered under legislation, so they're redundant.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments or questions regarding that? Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I'm not going to support removing them, not because I necessarily oppose the direction, but because there's not enough information. I did review A11 land sales, and it does have it's quite old, but it does have a bunch of specific details in it, such as when land is sold, what fund the proceeds would be directed to, etc. Policy A12, I did not find on the city's agenda. A11 was there, but it skipped over to A13. So I'm not exactly sure the wording of that one to repeal, and it's not included in the report.
Okay, so Ms. Floyd, would you care to weigh in?
Yes, please, Mayor Sauls. Councillor Orlando through Mayor Sauls, the A11, in addition to conditions set out in the charter, Policy F14, Reserve Fund and Surpluses, also indicates that there is a land acquisition reserve fund that land sale funds go into. So it's a duplicate. And most of the other information contained within this policy is procedural and operational. So it's technically not policy driven.
Okay. Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Through to Councillor Orlando. So the governance committee will be reviewing, going through a number of policies. And so I guess the question I have through the chair is what would be helpful? I sort of understand, but what would be helpful for making these decisions so that we make sure that that committee is effective in providing recommendations to council?
Thank you for the question. I just feel that including in the report so that council members can prepare ahead of time to know what is coming at them, and specifically A12, it was not included in the report, and I don't know what I am rescinding. So just a bit more detail in the report, including, for example, links to the documents.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Simon, because land kind of falls under planning, do you have any comment?
Through your council, no comments from development services at this time. Again, we support corporate services that these policies are redundant.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Ms. Floyd, Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. I just want to make sure that we do get on a good path. I'm tempted to put in a motion to defer this decision until that information is provided to all council. But I'm just wondering if any other council members have any concerns or anything at this point or need other information.
Councillor Staples?
I just want to say that I do believe we got this agenda on Friday, and there was the opportunity to ask these questions prior if there was more information needed. So I'll be in support of the motion as it sits right now. And I would encourage Councillor Orlando, if in the future, if he has questions, to email those questions prior to council meetings, then we can address them beforehand, or we can have some late adoption, or we can amend the agenda to include those items. But I think right now, needlessly holding it up is just, not needed.
Any comments, Councillor Lucille, Councillor Cherry?
Thanks, Your
no.
Worship.
Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I trust the committee and staff's recommendations. I'm fine moving forward.
Yeah, Councillor Lucille?
Yeah, I would have to echo what Councillor Cherry just said. I was fine with the recommendations from fellow council members and from staff.
Any other comment here in the room? Councillor Palmer, then Councillor Orlando.
So I'm not going to put a motion to defer. I think we want to move along, but I think we'll add that discussion at the governance committee, what information should be contained in the package without, so that there's pertinent information, but not repeating what we're doing at the committee level. Otherwise, we could be bringing these to council.
Yeah, appreciate that. Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, just in response to discussion at the table, I frequently email administration staff to point out things like missing links, broken links on a document, things that are not there, things that are missing. However, I don't necessarily have the time every week to do that. In reviewing this one, simply put, I do not know what this policy rescinding says. It's not available. I went to check on the website, and I don't necessarily think it's my responsibility. It's fine to trust what the staff are saying, but my point is, moving forward, since the governance committee is a new committee, and governance by its nature is involved in dotting the T's and crossing the I's in terms of our policies and procedures and bylaws, I think it's important to have supplemental for the committee to bring enough information forward in this reporting so that people know, for example, what we are rescinding. I think most of the people at the table who vote yes in favor of rescinding this one do not know what the policy says, have not read the policy, and are just going because it's in front of the report before them. It's not a big deal, and I probably wouldn't be opposed to this if I had a bit more information, but unfortunately I don't.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note Councillor Orlando is opposed. Balance of councils in favor. This motion passes. Item number 2. Councillor Palmer.
Move that the Revelstoke Area Emergency Management Program Coordinator Policy A8 be referred to the closed meeting of the next regular council meeting.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Staples. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. All right, and item number 3. Councillor Palmer.
So I move that policy C6, nuclear weapons, rescind it.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Stapenhurst, discussion on the motion. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I'll speak to the motion. It's an interesting one. I guess for those watching this and sort of wondering what's going on and how we choose policies. We're basically staff is providing some stuff. This one is kind of interesting to me because I guess I think it would be natural for people to wonder, well, why do we have a nuclear weapons policy in the first place? And it goes back to the 70s, 80s. There was a movement amongst local governments in the anti-nuclear environment to have those kind of policies saying that we're not going to build nuclear bombs in our community. What I find interesting, though, is just the times we are in right now in an unstable world.
Right.
So I'm not sure if this is going to spark any sort of discussion based on that. I'm certainly taking note that we don't see the policy specifically right here, as further to Councilor Orlando's comments. But basically, the discussion at the committee level was it's an area that we just simply do not have jurisdiction. So the policy is arguably one of making political statements that we actually don't have jurisdiction over.
Great, appreciate that comment. Any other comments from around the table? Councilor Orlando?
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. The policy is on the city's portal. I did go take a look at it. It was from 1985 and written in Courier font on a typewriter. Often these were put forward to, again, send an anti-nuclear proliferation message, as well as avoid being targeted by nuclear weapons by explicitly doing this. Whether that had any effect or not, probably not, in my opinion. However, just a comment that I have reviewed and seen the policy. It is available to read on the website.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councilor Orlando's opposed, balance of council is in favor. This motion passes. Moving on to 9A. Someone want to put that motion regarding the 5-year financial plan? Someone online? Councilor Lucia?
I move that the 5-year financial plan bylaw number 2407 be read a first, second, and third time.
And that's from 2025 to 2029. Second motion, please. I will say, Councilor Stapenhurst. All right. Any discussion on the motion? We've seen this a few times around the table and through the Finance Committee. Comments? Councilor Palmer.
This is becoming, I guess, somewhat customary. Mayor Souls, I'm going to put a motion to amend the motion and strike out third time, so it'll just be read at first and second time. And
Okay.
if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seeing no seconder, the existing motion stands. Any further comment on the motion? Councilor Palmer?
I will be opposed to the first, second, and third readings. This is arguably the most important, well, as far as finances, the most important financial decision that council is making. And what has been the practice in years gone by of having a bit of a pause. So that's, I guess, just the comments, but I'll just make some sort of general comments. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for their work on the financial plan in the process, including the schedule that was adopted a long time ago, and a pretty robust public consultation process, including on Talk Revelstoke, and having the open house and the survey. So we got lots of comments, and I applaud staff for that because it was much more than the communities our size. Well, I think pretty much any community really sees on a regular basis. So good work on staff on that. And also on the general reporting of the information, I thank staff for taking some leadership in providing areas that from their perspective, needed enhancement, and that's reflected in a number of employees being added should this pass. Having said that, I feel that as a council that we haven't dove into the details, and unfortunately I didn't bring some of my notes, but I'll keep it reasonably short. So in the survey comments, there was a lot of concern about taxation, which is normal, you see that. And it felt to me that the citizens, it's ramping up this idea of taxation. And again, I had a couple that I was going to quote, but just on how the increase in taxation, when it's exceeding the rate of inflation and cost of living, that money has to come from something else. And for some people, that'll be recreation, and maybe not a big deal, maybe. For others, we're stating, actually, this is coming from basic needs. And it seemed to me, and I've had a couple of comments from middle class saying, you know what? My house is becoming unaffordable because of taxation. And one of the things that we did not do is find areas that could be reduced without impacting services, things that we're doing that are no longer necessary. So for the last several years, we've been increasing taxes, saying we need to do this, we need to do that. But there hasn't been any substantial looking at what can we actually take out of the budget. And so that's my concern on that. Again, just going back to applauding the work of staff, we're well ahead of the May 15th deadline. There is opportunity should this council decide to dig a little bit deeper. There's plenty of time to find areas that we could reduce our operational expenses. The one area that council did consider, and there was also quite a bit of comment, is the amount that we're putting towards the multiplex center. And there's a number of opinions. There was a kind of a split opinion as far as the comments on the need of that. There was good stats that through the survey that staff did on Talk Revelstoke, there was good stats on overall for the population, those that are favorable and those that were not in favor. And that's one area that I think council did a good job of, or a reasonable job of discussing the pros and cons of having additional taxation for the multiplex. And that it was forward thinking and saying, okay, what are our needs going to be in the future? So that part we did good. On the day-to-day operations, I think we were weak. And so those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor Souls.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, Ms. Moore, any comments on the 5-year financial plan from your perspective?
Through the chair, I'll remind everyone of the breakdown of the 6% tax increase that is included within this plan. So we have the core budget increase of 1.25%. And please keep in mind that in 2024, we did a 5.25% wage increase for QP. And in 2025, we're doing a 4%. So we did have to play a bit of catch up with the wages. This also includes 2.75% for increased new spending operating packages and 2% increase for increased transfers to the arena redevelopment reserve. From staff's point of view, we are looking forward to moving forward with the 2025 plan and getting projects started and off the ground for the community.
Good, I appreciate the comments. You have one last comment, something that you haven't already said, Council Plummer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Yeah, it's just a question regarding public consultation. So there's the summary from the presentation of the special committee of the whole of all the comments. And there was the survey, I think it was December 8th, there was a deadline and saying that. And I just was wondering if there was any comments provided by the public after that deadline that were provided to the city.
Ms. Floyd or Ms. Moore, do you have any information on that? Ms. Moore?
Through the chair, we closed down the ability to take the survey and provide comment after December 8th online on Talk Revelstoke. The budget email, budget@revelstoke.ca, remained open, and I did not receive any further correspondence after the deadline.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, Councillor Lamb, you have one comment before we call the question.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just want to say I agree with parts of what Councillor Palmer is saying. I don't think it's necessary to go for a second and third reading, and specifically, I think staff have done a great job in the financial plan process. Any sort of concerns I've had, I've mentioned them at this table, but on the whole, I think it's a great process. But I think the thing I would agree with is, as you know, the many years I've been here through the budget process, they've widely changed, and one thing I think we could do a little bit more is go through it as part of the process with the lens of looking at things that, for example, are redundant, that are no longer effective, that are questionable, with a view towards reducing the taxation impact. Just as speaking to general history, I think for many, many years in the past, the city had a sort of default austerity stance on the budget, and that was actually harmful to us in the sense that we didn't get our infrastructure, we weren't keeping up with infrastructure, and we weren't keeping up with a lot of things that we needed to do, and those things in the end became costlier to do, both in that they piled up and the repairs went from a repair to a replacement, for example, in a lot of things. I think we're closer to where we need to be, but again, that opportunity to not just review the add-ons, but again, take a view to reductions, and also not just line item small things, but philosophical changes or direction changes. For example, what is in-house, what is out of house, what service do we want to consider discontinuing, that kind of stuff would be something, I think, because I think overall we moving forward, the economic forecast has a lot of uncertainty. There's certainly dark clouds on the horizon right now, and I think moving forward we need to put more of a lens on it. But overall, I just want to commend staff for doing a good process, and as we feel confident about constantly tweaking and redoing the process, I think I agree with Councillor Palmer that next year we need to do a little bit more of that moving forward, just taking a look at what we can find to reduce.
Great, appreciate the comments, and we will do that at the Finance Committee. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Palmer is opposed, balance of councils in favor. This motion passes. Moving on to item 11A, staff reports. Economic Opportunity Fund recommendations. And before we go into the motion, Mr. Watmo, do you have any comments or an overview that you would like to give? You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the opportunity. I don't think there's anything beyond the brief that needs to be clarified on these two requests. One is from the Revelstoke Chamber of Commerce for $8,000 for a business retention and expansion study. This represents about 11% of their total budget. And then the other request is for $150,000 for the shuttle service, representing about 20% of the total shuttle service for the year. So I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
All right. So let's put the first motion on the table. Somebody want to make that motion for me, Councillor Lando?
Your worship, I'm happy to make the motion. Number one, that a recommendation be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate 8,000 from the Economic Opportunity Fund to the Revelstoke Chamber of Commerce for completion of a business retention and expansion study.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Rolando?
Yes, Mayor Saul, I was happy to speak to that, and I was going to say that Director Watmow couldn't be with us today, but in fact he is here because he's at a conference. So yeah, I think he's covered everything, and I think the background reports explaining it say it all. So happy to move forward with this.
Great, appreciate that. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Item number 2, someone want to put that on, Councillor Orlando?
Sure. I move that a recommendation be made to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Board to allocate 150,000 from the Economic Opportunity Fund to the 2024-2025 shuttle service, inclusive of contingency funding.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Lusal. Any further discussion on the motion? Do you want to elaborate at all, Councillor Orlando?
No, other than what's contained in the report, this is, one thing I would elaborate on just in case anyone misheard, it's 150,000, here, sorry, I misheard a slightly different number, but, it's just, the audio. This is for, shuttle service, part of the contribution to the ongoing, improvements, in our transit system, expansion of our transit system in both, frequency, efficiency, and also in ridership numbers, which were up dramatically last year despite sort of a slow snow year. And I expect to be up significantly more at the end of once we do our reporting from the current year.
Great. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Watmo. Appreciate it. Moving on to item 11B, acreage alteration permits application. Mr. Simon, is there an overview that you'd like to provide?
Your worship, no presentation and no standard overview. Staff are here to answer questions should council have any.
All right, appreciate it. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please. Councillor Cherry.
Move that heritage alteration permit be issued for an addition to an existing single-family dwelling at 112 3rd Street East.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Staplenhurst. Any discussion on the motion? Any questions? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I'm going to commit a sin at the council table. I'm supportive of this. I'm going to support this application. Looks great. I just have a general question related to it that might be helpful for staff going forward. And it relates to a question I asked last time. And that is just looking at this, it seems to me that the height restriction is sort of a primary factor in how the final look is. And I'm just wondering how you guys determine that in terms of all the different rules or restrictions. Last time we heard in talking to a similar sort of situation that it was the preference of the applicant. I guess what I'm driving at is I don't want us to be, for example, reducing density or ability to grow because the consideration is, just hard limit height restriction. So therefore we got to change it. Maybe it's just better to have that room and would fit in. I'm just wondering how you interpret that, because I just moving forward with similar applications. And again, happy to support this one as is. I'm wondering if there's any sort of thoughts on that. That's my main thought.
Mr. Simon.
Your worship, Councillor Orlando, just to clarify, are you referring to the different examples that are in there where it shows council if you had a 12-12 pitch?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it is always an iterative process working with the applicant, and staff's goal is always to get as much in alignment with those heritage conservation area design guidelines as we can, which admittedly at times could be interpreted a little bit subjectively.
Yeah.
That's what happens with guidelines that are 15 years old or so now. But so we do work with the applicant again. The goal is always to try and understand what are they trying to achieve with the project, and how can we make sure that they are in as best alignment as they possibly can be before it goes to council with those guidelines. In this particular case, it was actually the applicant's preference from working with them that they felt that the 12-12 pitch would have been too overpowering for the existing dwelling. So they actually preferred the 8-12 pitch, which works for us because it aligns with the guidelines and staff were also in agreement that the 12-12 would have been a little bit too tall for the existing principal residence.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good. All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor Souls, for the
Yes.
next item, I have a conflict of interest in that I have a business relationship with one of the applicants,
All right,
just for number C.
great. All right, thank you. We'll allow you to leave and then call you back in momentarily. Someone want to put this motion on the table for me, Councillor Cherry?
I move that Public Art Committee's recommendation to move forward with displaying artwork from Daniel Stewart and Tom Poole at City Hall for a period of 1 year be approved.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucille, any further discussion on the motion? Go ahead. Seeing none, I'll make comment. I'm quite appreciative of these people applying and look forward to displaying their art in City Hall. So quite appreciative of that. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Can we let our councillor back in, please? Councillor Palmer is returned. I'm going to ask someone to make the motion for 11D, please. Councillor Cherry?
I move that Public Art Committee's recommendation to relocate the 4 season quilt art panels to the Revelstoke Community Center be approved.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucille, any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence for SILGA, Southern Ontario Local Government Association call for resolutions. We have 4 different resolutions that have been brought in draft form. And so draft Bill 44 resolution. Any comments from council on that resolution? Move on to conservation officers resolution. Any comments or concerns about that?
Just have a general question. So our process with these, we have this draft. Are they going to be coming formally back to council for ratification?
This way.
Councillor Palmer through Mayor Sauls. Yes, last week or 2 weeks ago, I sent out a little flow chart to council. So the plan was to put these draft resolutions forward today, have like a week or a few days to work through them if there were any recommended changes, to send them to SILGA for final approval and tweaking, and then come back on February 11th so that there can be a formal council resolution by the deadline of February 21st.
Anything further?
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Just on the conservation officers, excuse me, conservation officers resolution, as I've had several conversations with the conservation officers and the minister regarding that. We have service coming forth to us from the Salmon Arm office. They've made it quite clear that they're not going to put officers in any time in the near future because they need to put 2 officers in every time they put officers anywhere, and they don't have the officers to do that. So we're at that. I'm not opposed to this going forward to SILGA to see if we can motivate government spending regarding that. Moving on to, Councillor Palmer, you have a comment.
I'll wait until they're all done.
Encampment resolution, again, MOTT, they're called now. Seems like every time we have government, it changes the name. When we talk about encampment resolutions or talk about encampments, and in particular this one that we have on highway property here in the city, MOTT will probably not do anything unless the city were to say, hey, it's a problem. And then we worried about where they would move them. So having that resolution go to deal with it is probably something Silga would support because there's encampments in a lot of cities in our area. And then the speed limit resolution, again, I'm not sure if that will see anything happen just because it's a provincial highway and they deal with that, but I have no problem with that going forward and have further discussion on that. So any comments from any of the other council? Councilor Palmer, did you want to weigh in on everything or?
Yeah, just I guess more on a general, so the process we do this, we make a recommendation going to Silga, then it gets debated at that point, maybe changed if other communities join in on it.
Right.
And then the next process to UBCM in the fall. I'm just wondering if this is the best venue for diving in more details, because I could definitely dive in deeper, and I'm not sure if this is the best venue, and I'm not sure. And so just some general comments so when it goes through Silga, they'll look at the data bank as to if there's been before and some of the things they've done. And I know some of these have been through more than once. In general, they're worded fine. I just sort of wondering about, the effective use of time in moving ahead. So specifically on the conservation officer, that's been to UBCM a couple of times already and is of concern of other areas. The other sort of general comment is we see at UBCM and at Silga as well, a lot of these resolutions, which are sort of broad statements that I guess from the skeptic side of my inside voice, if you wish, it's outside now, is that there's resolutions that say, province, there's a problem, do something, without something concrete.
Right.
And they tend to just sort of disappear in the woodwork. The other one that I note a fair bit is province, we need a whole bunch of money, but without, and so there's so many on that if all the UBCM, all the resolutions coming from all the communities were to be passed or adopted by the province, our taxes would probably go up several fold.
Yeah.
And so so some of the general, and I guess mostly is on, the direction. The other comment is if there is collaboration from other communities before formalizing, they become potentially much more powerful, especially if there's some action-oriented item on that. So those are my comments. I think these are fine. They'll go through. I'm just not sure of whether we want to dive into those kind of details. I suspect not at the council meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Councilor Staples.
Yes, thank you. The only, I've really enjoyed this process this year, and my gratitude goes to Ms. Floyd for all of her assistance in getting this process to be a little bit smoother. I think maybe the only feedback that I would have moving forward in the future is that we have enough time to run this by the various committees where they may apply. So, for example, the speed limit, maybe running that by the Public Infrastructure Committee. Maybe the conservation officer could go by the Environmental Advisory Committee, and then we're just better utilizing those committees to hopefully weigh in on some of these policies and, hopefully engaging more in those avenues for better feedback. So that's my comment. Thank you.
For your comment. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to communications. Revelstoke Area Economic Development Commission minutes. Councilor Orlando, this is your committee. Do you want to give us an overview?
Yeah, Your Worship. Yes, thank you. This is minutes from January 8th, Economic Development Commission minutes. Just taking a look at a few different items on the agenda. So reports from staff on Pacific Highlands Regional Home Building and innovation initiative. Mr. Watmel provided the committee with updates on some of his activities, looking at possibilities for future development in the home manufacturing processes here in Revelstoke by looking at some of the other innovative programs that are happening elsewhere, including traveling to see some of what our neighbors are up to. Other things down here, announcement for Ready Grants, which again are closing on February 3rd. The Ready Grants are formally known as the Community Initiatives Grant. As many community groups are well aware of these, but just a note to new community groups who may not have applied for these before. These are essentially community directed funds where individual groups, usually nonprofits, apply to for funding for a variety of projects. And so I'd encourage anyone who is remotely interested to have a look and consider applying. All the information is available on the city website. This is a CBD program, and the city of Revelstoke is an administrator of that program. And let's see, just a note on committee commission review process. We've touched on that a little bit. And we're also, a reminder to me, and I'm behind on this one, we have a member survey opportunity, or a member survey process going on, where eventually they'll get posted to the website, where we can share all the details of a really strong team, including brand new members that we just welcomed last meeting at Community Economic Development. So I'm impressed, and once we get these posted up on the website, everyone else can go look and find out who's who there. And again, thanks to all the volunteers for the service to the commission for driving forward economic development initiatives in the city. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Any comments from council for Councilor Orlando? Seeing none, I'm going to move on. Ms. Delaselle, do we have any questions from the press?
We have no questions from the press, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1 A, D, E, and F of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion for me, please? Councilor Lucelle, seconded by Councilor Palmer. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a few minute break and then come back in camera. Thank you.